Like my realistic stream video, here I will be focusing on one aspect of my layout and walking through how I detailed my level crossing. My starting point is an off-the-shelf Peco curved crossing kit with an add-on for my second radius curve. The length of the assembled crossing is wider than my layout allows, so I have shaped the outer ramp to fit the edge of the baseboard. Otherwise, the assembly is completely standard, although I am gluing the clip-together joins. This part of the project is also covered in the second video of the main baseboard build, which deals with track geometry, foundations for the scenery, preparing and laying of the track. It also explains how useful the crossing is for getting the concentric circles right, and why it is where it is on the layout. So when assembly is complete, I'm ready to glue in place. For this, I'm running a bead of no more nails on the baseboard around where the crossing will go, the site of which I have accurately marked after several dry runs, tweaking the position as required. I'm also applying glue to the bottom of the level crossing where the moulded plastic will come into contact with the baseboard. The glued assembly can now be put into place and pushed down firmly once I'm completely happy with the position, paying particular attention to where the rails are. Any excess glue that has squished out the sides can be scraped away with the edge of a plastic membership card. When the glue is dry, the track either side of the crossing can be glued down, ballasting as we go. So, with basic construction complete, we can begin detailing in earnest. I've started this with some filler, smoothing the edges of the crossing to the baseboard and between the plastic components, and I've temporarily positioned the buildings and the gates to help plan ahead. For starters, I'm using a stone textured spray paint, as I did under the track laying in part 2 of the main project video. And here I have already sprayed the crossing and surrounding areas, masking the rails and anywhere else I don't want the spray. Now the stone textured paint is dry, I'm masking the sides of what will be the road, lining up with the moulding on the level crossing. With the edges defined, I can just cover up everything else with newspaper. For the road surface, I'm using the same anthracite acrylic spray paint I used for the baseboard, but this time spraying lightly so the stone textured paint shows through underneath, gradually building up the layers until I'm happy both with the colour and the evenness of coverage. After leaving to dry completely, I can start peeling up the masking tape. But don't be too hasty or some of the paint will come up with it too. Now you can see the defined but subtle edge of the road, with the gravelly area beyond blending in with the ballast of the track. You can also see that I have left the plank section unpainted so it doesn't get damaged when cleaning the track. Now I can remove all of those other little bits of masking tape. The bits under the buildings, and the ones protecting the holes where the gate posts fit. One of the reasons for choosing the Peco kit is that, as the layout is going to be taken in and out of storage quite frequently, I wanted something a little bit more robust, and being able to remove the gates as required is a bonus. A small trade-off of practicality over detail. The buildings are also removable for storage, with a rectangular hole cut into the base of the building and a corresponding piece of foam board stuck to the layout for easy location. However, there are some scenic elements that I'm going to risk permanently attaching to the surface, among them the fences that go either side of the crossing. And here we can see the advantage of using the foam board for the surface of the layout, as it can easily be punctured where the fence posts need to go and then they can be glued in. This will make the fences a little bit more robust than if they were just glued to the surface. I'm also adding some foliage and some more ballast up to the edge of the fence, not only for looks, but also for a little bit extra structural stability. As with the stream video, I'm using 2 shades of clumping foliage, which I am roughly tearing to a variety of sizes to represent the wild foliage encroaching on the edge of the fence. And in between, I'm scattering some granite ballast. I prefer to build up these areas gradually over a period of time, and while I'm doing the fence, I'm just adding a little bit extra to the area between the tracks. Bushes first, and then the ballast. Over on the other side of the crossing, the railway side of the signal box fence is receiving the same treatment. I ended up painting the white fences a more natural wooden colour, mainly to give a nice contrast to the white of the crossing gates, and in hindsight it would have been much better to do that first, but the end results were much the same, as you can see here with the completed painted fence. The next job will be the road markings, for which I will need to remove the gates in order to mask and airbrush the lines. As with a lot of things with model railways, scale is something of a compromise, and the road markings are no exception. In reality, the carriageway would be considerably wider, but I am using the width of the wheels of my largest truck as a guide. It is a country road, after all. First of all, I'm laying down a strip of masking tape onto my cutting mat, making sure it's nice and straight. I can then mark out the width of my carriageway, in this case 33mm, and slice the tape into a strip of the right measurements. Carefully peeling up the tape, it can then be transferred over to the crossing. The gate stops can helpfully be used to align the tape to the centre of the road, but I don't want my lines to be quite that wide, so I need to overlap it a bit. The strip for the other side of the road is measured and cut in exactly the same way. In real life, the white lines are only about 10 to 15 centimetres wide, and using the handy exactrail.com calculator, that works out at about 1.5 millimetres. Not forgetting the pedestrians, I'm laying an 11mm strip either side of the carriageway, keeping the same distance for the lines. Using the online calculator again, I can see that's roughly 85 centimetres IRL, which again is a bit narrow, but probably proportionally about right in relation to the road. A bit of online research shows that road markings were actually introduced back in the 1920s, but particularly in recent years have developed and changed quite a lot. As I want my layout to be largely era neutral, leaving me to run the broadest variety of trains, I'm keeping the lining simple, so no yellow diamonds and only a single centre line. But I do need solid lines for the edge of the pavements. With the sides masked, I can start dividing them up into the various dashed lines for the approaches to the crossing, and mask off the rails. With all the detailed areas masked off, I just need to protect the surrounding area either side of the crossing from overspray. As the area I'm painting is so small, I'm using tubed acrylic paint mixed with waterborne thinners to roughly the consistency of skimmed milk, stirring really thoroughly. I'm also adding just a drop of Dove Grape to soften the whiteness just a bit. When I'm happy with both colour and consistency, I can screw on the lid of the jar and assemble the airbrush. My airbrush is nothing fancy, a standard class Revell, which I've had for years. But I did invest in a fairly basic compressor, which works so much better than those air cans. As with the road surface, I'm building up the layers of paint very gradually. Even with the addition of the grey paint, I really don't want the white to be too white. I also want them to sit naturally into the surface, and avoid that stuck-on look. So I'm holding back, and I'm going to check before going too far. So choosing a corner I can easily put back if required. I'm peeling back a section of tape, and now that I know I've got the finish I'm happy with, I can start unmasking the whole thing, making sure that the paint is completely dry, obviously. As always, take your time with the peel back. And even though I'm picking up some bits of ballast, that really isn't a problem. To keep the masking as simple as possible, I decided to approach the road markings in 2 stages. And when the first set are completely dry, I'm masking across the road for the stop lines, again making sure that the width of the lines is consistent. And then I can add a little bit of masking tape over the ends of the already painted bits, ensuring they don't get a double hit. The curve of the track makes it quite difficult to do this by eye, so I'm just measuring to make sure it's completely at right angles. As before, once the details are masked, I can cover the surrounding area with newspaper to protect against overspray, and mask off everything else with a bit more tape. Once again, we are spraying just a tiny area, so I'm hoping the economies of my tube paint and thinner combo will pay off. And once again, I'm adding a tiny bit of grey. A better organised person would have probably kept some of the first batch. As before, I'm gradually building up the spray, and I want to achieve a consistent colour with my previous lines. So far so good, but unfortunately, as I peeled up the masking tape, I realised some of the paint had crept underneath. I may have got the consistency slightly wrong, as it was such a small batch, or just oversprayed while the paint was still wet. Either way, the trick is not to panic, and using a little bit of grey paint on a fine square-ended brush, I can gradually paint over the excess white paint, feathering into the road surface, and forget the whole sorry incident. With the road markings complete, we could just replace the gates, and the project would be done. But after how pleased I was with the softening of the fences, I want to do the same thing to the crossing gates themselves. And here you'll see how a light coating of a pale grey has taken the edge off the whiteness of the white plastic, and dulled down the sheen for that softer finish that I'm looking for. Once again, I've decided to make life difficult for myself, and instead of brush painting the red stop circles on the gates like any sane person would, I've opted to airbrush them, so more masking is required. Having traced the edge of the circles with a fine liner, I'm cutting the mask with a brand new blade, starting in the middle of the arc and working outwards in either direction. Popping it back on the gate, I can check for accuracy and tweak if required. As well as the stop signs, I want to paint the lanterns on 2 of the gates at the same time. So I am trimming the tape around the lamps as I gradually build up an envelope of masking tape around each gate. After quite some time, all 4 of the gates are cocooned in their own parcel of masking tape, with only the lamps and the circular stop signs unmasked and ready for the spraying. Whilst rooting through my big box of bits, I found this telephone box from a previous project. I thought it would be great to add a little bit of extra colour to the far side of my crossing, but I want to paint it first to lose that plasticky sheen. Obviously, I can't mask out every single one of the little windows, but a strip of masking tape the width of the general area will be more than adequate in achieving the general effect. I'm using tubed acrylic paint again, mostly cadmium red, but with a little bit of alizarin crimson to tone it down a little. All mixed together with the same waterborne thinners. I'll just spend a bit longer getting the consistency exactly right this time. And as I'm spraying several things at the same time, I can allow a little bit longer between each spray to prevent the build-up of wet on wet paint. Most of the spraying can be done flat on the surface, but those lamps will require an all-round spray. And I mustn't forget the back of the telephone box and the roof. Building up the layers gradually has really paid off, and I'm happy with the finish. So when everything is completely dry, I can start unwrapping the masking tape bundles, and with the tip of a scalpel, remove the tape from the telephone box. The only tiny bit of hand painting I've done is to pop a little bit of paint in the lens of each of the lamps, and with the telephone box glued in place to one side of the crossing, all that remains is to replace the gates. Then I can run some trains, starting with a track cleaning run to remove any bits left behind by the build. If you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, why don't you check out some of my other projects, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.